Good morning, students. Our today's topic is cardiac cycle. So, first, what is cardiac cycle? Cardiac cycle is defined as the sequence of alternating contraction and relaxation of the atria and ventricles in order to pump blood throughout the body. So, cardiac cycle is a rhythmic or sequence of contraction and relaxation of atria and ventricles. When the auricles or ventricles contract, the word systole is used, that is auricular systole or ventricular systole. When they relax, the word diastole is used, that is auricular diastole or ventricular diastole. So, how does the heart function? Let us take a look. To begin with, all the four chambers of heart are in a relaxed state. That is, they are in a joint diastole. So, first we are considering that both auricles and ventricles, that is, all four chambers are in the rest state or relaxed state. This is known as joint diastole. During joint diastole, blood is poured in the left and right atria. In the left atria through pulmonary vein and in the right atria through vena cava. So vena cava bring deoxygenated blood and pour into right atria. Similarly, pulmonary vein brings oxygenated blood and pour into the left atria. So during diastole stage, both atria are in relaxed condition and these vessels are bringing blood into these auricles. During this filling of blood, atrioventricular valves, that is bicuspid and tricuspid valves, are open. And atrioventricular valve means bicuspid, which is present in the left side, and tricuspid, which is present in the right side. They are open and allows the blood to flow from atria to ventricles. So during joint diastole, the blood comes in auricles, and from the auricles some blood is going into the ventricles also. So during joint diastole, there is 70% filling of ventricles. So from the auricles, blood is going into ventricle also. Bicuspid and tricuspid valve are also open. But semilunar valve at this time is closed. Semilunar valve is present between the aorta and in the pulmonary artery, the artery which takes the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle. After joint diastole comes auricular systole. Now the auricles contract. So here more blood is poured into ventricle. When auricles contract, so auricles push more blood into the ventricle. So 30% more blood is poured into the ventricles. Next comes ventricular systole. Now ventricles are full with blood. Now the ventricles contract, that is systole, ventricle systole. Now when the ventricle systole, semilunar valves open. The valves which are present in the pulmonary artery and aorta, they open. But now the bicuspid and tricuspid valve closes. The reason is to prevent the backflow of the blood. Otherwise, due to the pressure of the ventricle, blood can move back into the auricle. So to prevent the backflow of the blood, the tricuspid and bicuspid valve closes. Now the blood flows into the pulmonary artery and aorta. Now from your book, as the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open, blood from the pulmonary veins and vena cava flows into left and right ventricle respectively through the left and right atria. First blood comes in the atria and then it comes into the ventricle also. So 70% of the blood of the ventricle come in this way only. This is a joint diastole or relaxed state. The semilunar valves are closed at this stage. The SAN, sino-auricular node, now generates an action potential which stimulates both the atria to undergo a simultaneous contraction. The atrial systole. Now the atrial systole, the contraction of atrium occurs. This increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. Now more blood is poured into the ventricles. The action potential is conducted to the ventricular sides by the AVN, auriculoventricular node, atrial ventricular node, and AV bundle, from where the bundles of His transmits it through the entire ventricular musculature. The action potential which is generated from SAN, it travels to the AVN, then goes through the AV bundle and to the complete ventricular musculature till the Purkinje fibers. This causes the ventricular muscles to contract. Now the ventricles contract. This is known as ventricular systole. When ventricle contract, the word is systole. But now the atria undergo relaxation. That is, now the atrium is at diastole stage, coinciding with the ventricular systole. Ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, causing the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valve due to attempted backflow of blood into the atria. When the ventricles contract, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves closes because in the ventricles high pressure is there, which causes the bicuspid and tricuspid valve to close and to prevent the backflow of the blood from ventricles to auricles. As the ventricular pressure increases further, the semilunar valves guarding the pulmonary artery and the aorta are forced open. When the ventricle contracts, here in the ventricle, the pressure is about 120 millimeter of mercury. Under this pressure, the semilunar valves open, allowing the blood to move into these vessels. The ventricles now relaxes. When the blood moves into these vessels, now the ventricle is at the condition of diastole, relaxed condition. And the ventricular pressure falls, causing the closure of semilunar valves. When the pressure falls, the semilunar valves closes, which prevents the backflow of blood into the ventricles. Why these semilunar valves closes? Because otherwise under low pressure of ventricle, the blood can come back into the ventricle again. So to prevent this one, the semilunar valve closes. As the ventricular pressure declines further, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are pushed open by the pressure in the atria exerted by the blood which was being emptied into them by the veins. When the semilunar valves closes, after that the tricuspid and bicuspid valves open because the vena cava and pulmonary artery is bringing blood into the atria, which forces these atrium to open these valves. So now the blood also flows in the ventricle also. That is the first stage, that is the joint diastole stage. The blood now once again moves freely to the ventricles. The ventricles and atria are now again in a joint diastole stage as earlier. Soon the SAN generates a new action potential and the events described above are repeated in that sequence and the process continues. So this again, every time the SAN generates a new action potential and this process is repeated again and again. This sequential event in the heart, which is cyclically repeated, is called a cardiac cycle, and it consists of systole and diastole of both the atria and ventricles. So cardiac cycle consists of systole and diastole of auricles and ventricles. As mentioned earlier, the heart beats 72 times per minute. That is, that many cardiac cycles are performed per minute. The heartbeat in 1 minute, the heart can beat 72 times. So from this it could be deduced that the duration of the cardiac cycle is 0.8 second. So in 0.8 second one complete cardiac cycle occurs. During a cardiac cycle, each ventricle pumps out approximately 70 ml of blood, which is called stroke volume. So important definition, what is stroke volume? During the cardiac cycle, the ventricle pumps the blood, which is approximately 70 milliliter, which is known as stroke volume. The stroke volume multiplied by the heart rate gives the cardiac output, how much blood is passed out, cardiac output. The stroke volume multiplied by the heart rate, that is the cardiac output per minute. Therefore, the cardiac output can be defined as the volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute. So definition important, what is cardiac output? It can be defined as the volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute, and it comes out to be 5 liter in a healthy individual. The body has the ability to alter the stroke volume as well as the heart rate and thereby the cardiac output. For example, the cardiac output of an athlete will be much higher than that of an ordinary man. During each cardiac cycle, two prominent sounds are produced, which can be easily heard through a stethoscope. Stethoscope is the instrument through which we can hear the sound, heartbeats. The first heart sound is known as lub, is associated with the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valve. When the bicuspid and tricuspid valve closes, the one sound is produced that is known as lub, whereas the second heart sound known as dub is associated with the closure of semilunar valve. So second sound is produced when semilunar valve closes. These sounds are of clinical diagnostic significance. I hope this is clear. Thank you.